All right, so welcome to the video. This is a Q&A. This is part 2 of the winter Q&A that we're doing here for our new viewers. So if you wanted to see part 1, I'll throw a link up for that so you can go back and watch that. Back to farming, owning versus renting equipment or land. Your opinion on it?
Well, when it comes to equipment, I mean, let's face it, whoever owns that machine, it's got to make sense to them. There has to be some profit there someplace to rent it out. And then, so that if there's something that gets broke, you're going to be responsible for that, or, so that when that machine wears out, it's more than paid for and then some. So I suppose it depends on how if you're only going to use it, instead of going out and borrowing $100,000 for a machine, maybe it is better off to just rent one for a bit, like especially some specialty type stuff. But you have to look at it like, so in our situation, we want to own our own hay balers, because everybody's baling hay on that same day, and there's such a small window. So certain things.
Versus but then for us, having a combine doesn't make sense because we don't.
I mean, we could, but it wouldn't make as much sense as, for instance, owning the seed mixer. Because that's used every week and it's so consistently depended on, and that's the thing with some of that. And then as far as renting land, I think that's a great way to supplement, instead of trying to pay a fortune for something. And back in the 90s, it actually worked out for my wife and I quite well, where we got a very hilly farm. We didn't have a lot of hay. So as we were growing our herd, I was able to rent maybe 10 acres or 20 acres here, and then maybe after 2-3 years that would change, something would change hands or some other ideas would happen. I'd be able to go to the next neighbor would be off, and they would actually come to me. But a lot of the little dairies were stopping, and the big crop ideas weren't quite so aggressive yet. Now it seems like, because I never would want to take on a whole farm renting. Now it seems like it's either you take the whole place and pay a premium, or you're out. You never know tomorrow if you're going to have it or not.
Yeah, renting's a dangerous game for long term.
Sticking money into it, and same with equipment. I mean, if it broke, you blew the tire out, even if you drove over something ridiculous and you're responsible for that. Yeah, I got to put a new one on, even though it was an old one. It was, things like that. So.
And then, for my opinion on equipment for renting or leasing versus owning, I think. If you're on the more commercial side, custom side, you might be better off just leasing if you're using it all the time and it's wearing out super, super fast. It might pencil out better for you to lease it than to own it. But on a smaller scale like this, and you're using it just for your property, your crops, your cattle, you're probably better off owning versus leasing. So have you ever had a wagon roll away on you or roll over on this hilly farm?
I did. It was a very narrow little wooden wagon. Actually, my father-in-law gave it to me, but it had only a 7-ton running gear on it. And it was kind of funny because he'd call it the pregnant wagon because the sides were bellied out because it was green lumber. But anyway, I had it full of corn stalks. And I remember crossing slowly across the hill. It was rocking a little, and I thought it could tip, but then I thought it wasn't worth much. And I looked ahead, and when I looked back, it was on its side. It was almost more the cleaning up the mess of it all than it was that it didn't really break anything. But as far as, I don't know, running away, I did have one time, come to think of it, really steep. We were baling with those steel bale racks, those 9x16 bale racks, and I had a full load. I just unhooked it down along the bottom and hooked on empty one and drove up the hill back into the windrow. I think I had like 6 or 8 bales in there. And I look back and the wagon is running backwards down the hill. So I just stopped in my tracks, and all I could do was watch it. And it went a long ways. It probably went almost 1,000 feet. And then it turned, it was going backwards, and it turned nice. And it was right down in the bottom of the valley, like as if you'd have parked it there, with part of my baler pole attached to it yet. And I thought, what are the odds of that happening? So that turned out pretty good at the end. We had to fix the baler pole, but
very fortunate.
Could have been a full load tipped over in the pond or something, or something bizarre like that besides.
Now these next couple questions we'll get up and move around for it, but we'll ask the question here. what is your favorite tractor? So when we were coming up with these questions over dinner, my mother chimed in for this question, and we thought we'd share with you. This is her favorite tractor. It's the 7405 John Deere. This would have been your first
My first four-wheel drive, my first John Deere. Never really was a John Deere guy before, but I think this is open station, four-wheel drive, and we came from the narrow front, smaller tractors, which I've had her help me with some. And I think the real big plus of it is when you put the brakes on, this one stops where you want it to stop. You know, those smaller tractors, they're a little, you know, no power steering and some of that. So she loves it, and I don't blame her.
Yeah, it's a nice tractor. It's definitely up there.
105 horse, you know.
We got the loader for it as well. I'm sure if you've watched the videos, you've seen this one at work. It does a little bit of everything. So
it's a good all-arounder.
That's the real boss's favorite tractor. On to the next one.
And you're asking me which one is my favorite. I would probably choose the 7810. For one thing, it's probably the most valuable one out of all of them. And even when I bought the 7405 with my wife and the 7510, I always wanted a 7810, but it was probably about another 10,000 to get it. So we just thought, you know, we were going to have to wait on that idea. But I think it's about 150 horse. You know, the frame is slightly longer than the other two, even though it's still the 7000 series. A little bigger tires. You got the, what is that, the 42 inch on the back here. And that. So the other one's only got 38. I won't haul manure with it unless I would have to. You know,
Yeah,
to try
this
to keep it away from
This
that.
is definitely just the cropping tractor. It doesn't do a lot more than that. Move
Yeah.
some snow, things like that.
Now, so right now, yeah, we got the rear blade on here, and it actually starts the best out of all the diesels in the cold.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about this engine. I have to look up the specs again, but I know they've put this in some other different machines, and it's weird how some of your bigger block engines actually start better than your smaller block.
Yeah,
diesels.
compared to the other ones, they got the 414s, and this has got the.
It's for sure. It's a different block. It's bigger, but it still fits in that smaller frame. And that's.
I mean, they all, you know, when you start asking favorites, sometimes it depends on what we're doing with them.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, this could get real clumsy, like if we were trying to maneuver equipment around or do some smaller tasks versus, you know, like the Oliver, for instance, or something, you know.
But that's a good segue. So this would be Dad's favorite pick. I'd say I'd have to pick this too, just because it's the newest, nicest, rarest tractor. But to keep it interesting, we'll go to something older. It's a tractor I really enjoy driving, and I think it would be my top pick for the older equipment. So this would be my pick when it comes to the older equipment. I really like our Internationals, but driving the 1650 Oliver, this is the gasser, and with the narrow front, this tractor gets around really good. I wouldn't say it's necessarily like the most dependable or the best tractor in that regards, but as for drivability and just getting around, this would be my pick.
And I notice a lot of your people watching too. They always say, "Where's that Oliver?" You know, they'll comment on that Oliver a lot.
It's a pretty unique tractor. If you guys have been on the channel for a long time, you know that I purchased a 1550 Oliver, and I've recently sold that. I think they're good tractors, but they're definitely not the toughest. But
They got their issues a little.
Yeah.
The only real big thing I thought is the shifting can be a little bit tricky. They're not easy shifting tractors, but they don't pop out of gear. We haven't necessarily broke anything major in the transmission. The first thing my dad said, because my dad was all international, he was looking at this frame, you know, because he didn't know nothing about Olivers. He said, "Wow, a lot of casts in that frame." So, you know, you got a little weight there to keep things stable. But I think the big thing why I want to say right off is the steering on this thing is a one finger.
yeah,
And
the
it
power
really,
steering is
you
super
can
nice on
really,
this tractor.
you're not working at it to get this thing to maneuver. Yeah.
So that'd be my favorite pick.
She's right here with us.
As we're on the move, we have gotten a lot of questions and comments about our dogs. We do have a video about our dogs, so make sure to go check that video out. I'll throw a link up for that as well. But the main farm dog here, her name is Mariska, and she is St. Bernard. And then Darby and I's dog, her name is River, and she is a Great Pyrenees Springer mix. So that's the answer to that question. We get a lot of questions about these wheel gates, and I know you could talk about this quite a bit.
So my wife's father, he actually built a couple wheel gates where my wife grew up here, which is not in this area too. And so when we came here to this farm, my dad used to rent the farm from a couple old bachelors, and they had a lot of old horse machinery lying around there. And I was looking for scrap iron just to repair stuff, the barn stalls, and you name it. And there was a lot of iron in them old rakes and tedders and all these, different types of horse machines there. So for $30, $25, $35, $40, I was coming home with these things. This is back in the early 90s. And then got the brainstorming to use it and make something practical out of it. Started welding it together. We were making gates and parts of fences, and we were incorporating this stuff in. So then it almost got to be almost more of a desire to find more of it. So anytime we would find some of that, if we didn't have to spend a crazy fortune for it, we purchased it and kept adding to, I suppose you could call it a little bit of our theme.
The next question that we had, someone was asking about the silo and why the bricks are painted different, and what's the deal there?
Yeah, why there's the checkered look in two spots, and that silo was just a 12 by 30 originally. I believe somewhere in the mid 30s that silo was put up, and then it was added on to. 4 doors were added on. That'd be like 2 chopper loads to fill that, but anyway, so now it's a 12 by 40.
Now, another question we get quite often is, what's our favorite breed of cows? So we'll let Dad go first. He's the cattle man, that's for sure. So.
Well, it depends on if you want easygoing cattle. These Blue Roans, which is basically a Holstein Shorthorn cross, and they're very good about, if you give her a stall, she'll always go back to her stall. She won't cause any trouble. They're so easygoing. And if you wanted her to go somewhere different, she will. But far as maybe more profit-wise, the Jersey crosses, of course, the Holsteins will milk better, but they don't always turn out as good. We love to have the color. I think with the grazing and stuff, we get a little of both worlds. Some Swiss. It's more my wife's breed is the Swiss more.
Yeah, that'd probably be the favorite pick for my mother. I agree with Dad's first statement. I really like the Blue Roans. I like the look. They're a really pretty looking cow, and then I agree too. They are very docile. I don't know what it is, but that breed is, they're nice cows.
They've never been difficult, and they get old. For you, they don't fall apart when they're young.
No, they're good cows. And now we kind of got a question for you guys. We had someone ask us about the barn wall and what era that was from, because the inner wall is that rock.
It's sandstone.
Yeah.
Sandstone, and it's probably about 2 feet thick. And there's 8 foot, inside the barn, you're 8 foot to the ceiling.
Yeah.
And then this would be what we call the lower wall. So the upper wall's in the sandbank.
It's built into the hillside.
Yep. And then this side is this here. I don't know what they call this type of brick, but this is just a piece that come out of the back corner there that's going to have to be repaired. But they're hollow some, and they're very rough on the outside. And then on the inside, they're smooth. I think it would be considered to be a full foot thick, but I think it's 2 different blocks, depending on, and I was wondering what year, the years these bricks came out. Some of you older guys may know that.
Yeah, so if you guys know, let us know in the comments as well what year you think this brick is from. When was this commonly used to build buildings?
Because as of right now, I don't have any date on when this barn was built. I'm going to guess the late 20s, early 30s, but that I'm using this as maybe a reference of when this, I got a feeling, was kind of a new thing. And we see where I grew up, the house there was built out of these, and I think my dad said in the early 40s that was put up, and I'm not positive now on that. And there's a couple other homes and buildings in this area that got this same block. It's like almost like a slate, like a glass.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it breaks, it's brittle, but it doesn't deteriorate like cinder blocks do.
So we're back inside now, and this is a super interesting question, and I'm super excited to hear the answer. But people were asking, what would you have done, Dad, if you didn't farm right out of school? What do you think you would have done?
Yeah, I don't, that's a hard one. You never know how life can go. Let's say I didn't have the opportunity to buy a place or stumble across actually making this whole thing work out. I always was very interested in heavy equipment, like dirt work, like bulldozers, excavators, stuff, or, trucks. Not, as of right now, I don't care to be out on the road, driving stuff, but actually running heavy equipment. So it'd probably be something in those trades that way, something I've always admired. I mean, I do a little bit of that with the Bobcat, or I'll jump right on if somebody wants me to move something or to give it a whirl,
Heavy equipment operator. And that ties into another question. Right, if you had to stop farming today, what would you do?
Well, let's just say it's time for us to give you opportunity, for instance, or one of your brothers. I believe Mother and I need to get out of the way and maybe come here to help and assist, but yet not necessarily be here for everything that's happening, so that you can really become yourself and run it like you need to run it. I don't know. I always had a big interest in the lumber business, sawing lumber. I've been looking into some of that, purchasing maybe a band mill, and not where I would have to be like at it every day. I could, have it where maybe it'd be, I don't want to call it a hobby, but maybe we're
A retirement job.
in a sense, yes, where it'd be a little more lax, where you wouldn't have the stress, oh my God, we got to get these orders done and all that. Kind of like my chainsaw carving has gotten ready, where I may not get this done, but I probably will. That's usually kind of how I like to leave it, and that way. But that's a very physical thing. So as a person gets older, you might want to start looking into something that's not so, like a hydraulic mill.
Yeah. Something that isn't so physically demanding. This is another question that I've been getting here and there on videos, and also this Q&A stuff. Are we ever gonna sell apparel? With our size right now, I'm kind of scared to do that, because there's obviously different options and different ways to go about it. There's the print on demand type services, which are really popular. You might have heard of people like Farm Focus and things like that, where they make the item right when you order it, which I'm not opposed to that. But there's also the other side of it, where you'd buy a large quantity yourself and try to sell it. But there too, there's a lot more fees associated with trying to sell online than one might think of. Shipping costs, the platform subscription costs, all this stuff. So I'm timid to start selling apparel full bore, because I don't want to put all this work and effort in and only sell 50 items.
Well, and what are you going to do with it if you don't? I mean, you got 1,000 or something. It's. But I mean, I enjoy the fact where I know, especially when I was younger, if a salesperson was over and maybe Dad didn't purchase it or whatever, but they'd give you a hat or a jacket or something. You just love that, and you'll never forget that stuff, So to have our logo out there, that somebody could just, it makes a conversation piece. Or, where'd you get that? Check this out.
So yeah, as for apparel, in the future, I could see us doing something, or maybe like a limited time run. Obviously, it depends on your guys' feedback. If you guys keep asking about it, it's more than likely gonna happen. But as of right now, we don't sell anything. It's one of them deals where I don't want to do it unless we're doing it right. I'd hate to push it off to another company and then they aren't fulfilling orders like they should be, or the quality isn't there, because we'd hate to make a product for you guys in our
disappointed.
community. Yes.
It's better off not to do it if you can't do it right.
So we're working on it, is what I'll say to that question.
You have some, but it's
The only apparel that I've purchased, it's just been for family and friends, because to make that jump to that large quantity, that's going to take. We're not looking to push that, but we think it's a beautiful thing that our community wants to share a piece of Gierok Farms, even if that's through apparel. And we're definitely going to work towards that, but we're not, like I was saying, we're not going to jump the gun on that just to throw something out there. We're going to make sure it's nice. Like these hats I've recently purchased, we got our new logo on there, and it's some super high quality stuff.
And who actually made the logo?
Yeah, so if you guys didn't know, my wife, she drew the logo, so I might be able to throw up a better picture for you guys to see it, but super proud of that, because not only is it cool looking, to me anyways, it also means a little something being she
More
drew it.
personalized. She actually drew it herself, and she
Yeah.
was very concerned about how well it was done. And I
She's
said,
very particular, and
I'm a little bit into art, and I took one glance at it. I think it looks beautiful.
pretty proud of the work she put in when it came to our logo. So apparel is to come, but we're not gonna jump the gun on it. We're gonna do it right. Speaking of community and your guys' input, we've gotten a lot of mail over the past 2-3 months that we really haven't mentioned. We mentioned some last fall. We got a lot of Christmas letters, so we wanted to thank you guys for sending out those Christmas letters. And then we've also gotten some more recent mail regarding the planner that I purchased. I got 2 particular envelopes, one with a crazy amount of information in it, pamphlets. Thank you.
You would want that guy standing next to you when you start.
Yeah.
He knows his planners.
Thank you to you for sending all them booklets. That's really cool. That's history for us. It's
Very interesting.
Sent us magazines of the New Idea corn pickers back in the day.
Yeah, those
Their
brochures.
Yeah, their sales envelopes or booklets, whatever. you wanna
Yeah,
call
that
them.
was really cool. That's some neat stuff, and I can imagine guys that got all that stuff maybe collected up stuff back in the day. And what are you gonna do with it? You know, send it to somebody that's gonna like to have it around or to show it or display it.
So super grateful for all the mail we've got. Another one that comes to mind is we've got mail around Christmas where people talked about their background in agriculture. One was talking about how she's now works in the school system, but she grew up on a small farm like ours and was sharing her experience with us through a handwritten letter. And I think that was a
Long letter. It really went to my heart on how I think her watching us brought her back in time with her parents and her siblings, and how everything was and how she felt. And reading between the lines, it's easier almost for me to see than you, because at the time I've been through it. That is really special stuff. That, I guess, that fulfills the fact, like you say, is it worth doing? I'm willing to take time out for that, because whether we're inspiring the younger generation or the older generation saying, oh God, I remember those days and I know exactly how you feel.
Just hearing from you guys is great. So we love all the mail that any of you have ever sent, and we'll throw our P.O. box. It's always in our description. I can throw it up on the screen now. If you ever wanted to send us mail, we love looking at that stuff. We love reading it. We take time to
We
look
probably
at
make
it.
a Sunday afternoon out of that when you show up with that mail. And
So-
yeah, it kind of makes everything, my wife and I, and now our family, the one thing you have to realize is this place, everything you've seen, just about everything but the dairy barn and this Quonset building, this shop building, the structure itself, we physically put here. We didn't just hire somebody to build it for us. We had very few crews actually help us put this place together. And that's where it makes everything so much more special. And then to share it now I always thought too, way agriculture's going, is this place going to be able to survive as a dairy farm? Is the industry even going to, have a place for cater to it, or we may be never quite big enough or something to be selling products. So would I go into? You hear a lot of these places going into where they set themselves up for like a wedding venue, or they maybe host different. Like Don there out in, was it Connecticut?
Yeah,
That
ice cream.
I think that was his brother and his kids or something did the ice cream shop thing. Another way to kind of promote agriculture, but yet.
And that ties into that niche market comment that I was making. There's multiple ways for a small farm to bring in income, even outside of the direct agriculture commodity market that most people would think of right away.
Because I believe that the world is starving for this environment. maybe not, I believe they'd have an awful hard time putting up with the day-to-day work of it all. But to raise children in this environment and to have the see things born and maybe some things die and to see stuff grow up and and crops grow and then harvest and feed and see the whole process of making the food, it just gives you a whole different world of it.
A whole different perspective.
Oh, it's
Whole
like,
view on life.
yeah.
So I think that's a good place to end on a high note. Thank you to all of you for watching. Thank you for all of your comments, all of your mail, hitting the thumbs up button. It means a lot to us. It motivates us to keep doing these videos. And like I've been saying, if you got anything to say it down in the comments, good or bad, critiques, stories, any of that. We love reading the comments. Even if we don't respond to all of them, we're still
There's
reading
so
them.
many of them to respond to, but it's
we're-
that's what this question session was more about.
So we can kind of hit a lot of those general comments that we received. But anyways, thank you guys for watching the Q&A. Like I was saying, there is a part 1 as well, and there's a Q&A from last year, so you can check out those videos as well if you want to learn more about us, as well as any other video on our channel. We bring you along with to our day-to-day lives and what goes on here at Gierok Farms. So thank you all for watching, and make sure to check out all our other videos.
And don't forget to subscribe
Yep, and like it,
and like
and share it.
and share it and